Thanks for staying with us. Joining us on the show now is the Director, Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Lagos Bus Service Limited, Mr. Idowu Oguntona. Welcome to the show, sir. It's a pleasure having you.
Good morning.
Good morning. We wanted to start with transportation in Lagos because one of the things we have seen around is the buses. We see them parked in parking lot, not so much on the roads.
Right.
And we're thinking, when are these buses going to get on the road, and what exactly are the plans to decongest the bus stations, going forward for Lagos State Government?
Right. So thank you very much. Maybe first of all, I'd like to wish you a happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.
And it's a privilege to be on your show. Right. So if you look at Lagos State is a mega city of about 23 million people. And that poses such a huge challenge in terms of how you organize the public transportation within the state. And so in trying to respond to that challenge, one of the things the government decided to do is a bus reform initiative. And that initiative essentially is meant to basically just reorganize the whole bus system within the state, from the infrastructure that supports the bus transportation and the buses itself, and all of that. So currently, within the state, you have over 1,000 buses that are being operated by different operators. Now, Lagos State Bus Services Limited, which is the organization that I represent, is Lagos State government's direct intervention within that bus transportation space. And so as a company, the state has invested about 350 buses just within the span of about 2 years, right? And those buses on a daily basis provide mobility for over 70,000 Lagosians. And of course, there is a service plan in terms of how these buses are deployed. It's very much unlike the informal operators where an operator can just have a bus and then pick up the bus in the morning and just decide on which routes they want to go on. But as a regulated bus service, right, that we actually have service plans, meaning that you have designated routes, you have the minimum number of buses that you need to put on those routes, you have timetable, you have schedules, and all of that. So what you find is that at designated times, right, we deploy our buses from our depots to stations, to terminals, to provide transportation from our commuters from point A to point B. And so today we currently are covering well over 30 bus routes, starting from 6 at the inception of this administration. And so you find that there's been such a quantum leap in terms of inclusion and coverage of this service, from Festac all the way to Leventis, from Ajah all the way to Abule Egba, from Ikorodu all the way to TBS, across the whole city. So
let me try to understand what you said. So buses, we have about 1,000, right?
Yes.
You own, Lagos State government owns about 350 of that. Others are owned by private companies.
Operated by private companies, correct.
Just wanted to be sure I got clarity.
Yes, yes.
Go ahead,
yes.
Mary.
Yeah, so a lot of people, as we know, this is campaign season, and we've heard some of the conversations around that, especially about BRT lanes.
Correct.
And some people are saying that it would have been best to have other buses, mini buses, ply those BRT lanes. Why do we have it the way it is right now, where only BRT buses can go through those lanes and all the other mini buses go through the regular lanes?
All right. So the essence of having a BRT lane, which essentially is a dedicated bus corridor, that's the concept really. And what you want to do is you want to minimize travel time, right? And you must keep the road, those lanes, you must keep them as free as possible. You need to optimize it because it's got a limited capacity. Now, when you begin to now crowd those corridors with buses that are not under any regulation, there's no sense of, okay, what's the routes they're applying and all of that, it's just going to be completely chaotic, And that's what you have in other developed societies, where you have bus lanes that are dedicated for mass transit utilization, right? So a mass transit bus, for instance, the buses that we operate, right, will carry 7 people per time, right, as against a car that will carry maybe about 4 people per time, So the effect of that is that with every bus you inject, you're taking off approximately 15 to 20 buses, right, off the road. And so you need to be able to optimize that corridor. And I think the conversation really should be about how we deepen the use of public transportation, right? So one of the mayors of Bogota in Colombia made a very profound statement, right? And said a developed country is not a country where the poor own cars, but where the rich use public transportation. And really that's where we should begin to drive, that's where we should begin to go to, where there is a deep culture of transportation, because the public transportation is reliable, it is efficient, it is comfortable, it is safe, and all of that. So the idea around opening up the corridor for other users is just going to defeat the whole, the whole idea, really, in my view.
Okay, so let's talk about affordability.
Correct.
Every Nigerian wants something cheaper.
Right.
You know? We complain that our minimum wage is still very low, and so
absolutely,
you don't want to spend all of your salary in transportation. What is the plan for affordability for especially people who are, using this transportation system to access their businesses and workplaces?
Thank you very much, and that's a very good question. So one of the mandates that we have as an organization is to provide affordable public transportation. And so if you look at public transportation, or the cost of transportation itself is quite high, right? And if you focus specifically over the last 1 month thereabout, there's been escalation in the price of, in the cost of petrol. There's been the cash crunch, and that has made the use of public transport, or transport generally, very expensive for people. But one of the things we've done really is to halve our existing fare, right? So we've taken off 50% from the cost of transportation. So relative to other modes of transportation, right, today, our service, right, under the leadership of course, of our governor, is 50% cheaper, right, than any other public transport that you will find. And that's essentially, one of the indices for measuring an efficient, public transportation system, by making it affordable. So regardless of your social or economic status, you are able to access this public transportation. And really that's what we're doing. So our public transportation at this point in time is extremely affordable.
Yeah. So let's talk about the routes that you go. Because you mentioned now you called Festac, and I'm thinking after Doba, is that how far your buses go? We in the interior, deeper into towards the Anoba Okoko, we're waiting to see when the BRT buses will come. Also, they have a strategic designated lane for the BRT buses.
Yes.
How do you then, expand into the interiors, the other areas that are not on the major roads? On major roads.
Okay, so good. So one of the things that has happened within the whole bus transport space is that you have different modes, right? So you have the high-capacity buses, which we operate. You have the first and last mile that seats about 6 to 8 people, right? So the idea is that the inner roads can only be covered by the first and last mile. So they help to provide that connectivity to the bigger buses on the major road.
I don't see those on the bus, on the road. Last miles, do I see them?
I see them. I see them in the main.
White and blue?
In town.
The small ones.
The smaller minibuses.
Smaller ones, not enough in the area. I'm talking from the Badagry Express.
So my question is, sorry to cut you in. But those small buses, the Kurupe, are they under your own operation?
No, they're actually bigger than Kurupe. So they're under Lamata. Lamata is responsible for regulating the whole public transport system within the state. Lagos Bus Service Limited is the state's appointed bus operator. And basically we operate the high capacity buses. So you have other operators that do operate the smaller buses, and that's responding to the last mile. So our bus takes you to a particular station, and you probably still have about 3 kilometers to get to your final destination, all right? We can go within the inner roads. So the idea is to connect those smaller buses to our bus using the same payment platform, which is the carry card, and then providing comfort and accessibility for our commuters.
So I thought you also had those smaller last mile buses. I thought I've seen them parked in the parking spot. No, they're not yet out.
No, they're actually out, but they're not under our operations. So you have other operators, right? Because there's also the inclusion of private operators within the whole bus system in Lagos State.
So it's the BRT buses.
So we're speaking specifically to...
So how many do you have an idea of how many last mile, first mile buses are now out there? And what do you plan to do to build on the capacity of the buses?
Okay, all right. So there are currently 500 buses, first and last mile out there. And the idea is that, of course, government does not have the wallets to cut the check for all the buses. So the idea is that once you demonstrate the proof of concept with these initial 500 buses, then the private guys come in and they begin to fund and they do the operations themselves. So today, as of today, we have 500, first and last mile buses that are operating within the city.
How foolproof are your bus stations? Because when you get to a bus station,
yes,
you should easily be able to identify, okay, this bus comes here, this time, I mean, how we see abroad, but you can actually predict, you can plan your trips based on that.
Absolutely.
So, but when you go to the bus, you're just asking people, madam, please, which bus is here? And which way, how are you making your bus stations such that people can actually understand where the routes are?
Okay, so that's a good point you've touched on. Now, within the bus reform project, there is the ITS, which is Intelligent Transport System, right? And what that is basically made to do for you is to help for planning and scheduling. And part of the things that will do, which is currently being implemented by Lamata, is that at every bus station, you will have a passenger signage that speaks to the arrival time of the next bus, the waiting time and all of that. And all of that is integrated to a backbone, to a command and control center, where those information, those data are being actually sent out to the commuter. So yes, we're not yet there, right? But that fits in perfectly into the bus reform initiative that the government is currently implementing.
Okay, we have to wrap up with it, but thank you. I mean, and just like the Mayor said, it's campaign season, so everybody's saying, what has this government done for transportation? Because many people are worried about the waiting time at the bus station. Sometimes, especially when there's fuel scarcity, you end up waiting so long. Do you have independent ways of fueling your buses such that it doesn't get affected by when we are having issues? You shouldn't be having issues. You have some kind of independent supply.
Absolutely. So, we speaking specifically to your fueling question. So we have a depot from where we stable our buses, we wash them, we maintain them, and we deploy them. And there we have a fuel dump. And we have a contract with a major oil supplier that provides us with diesel, and we ensure that we fuel our buses regularly. Now, speaking to what we've done, I think it's out there for us to see. So first off is providing the options for Lagosians. So if you want to go on a demand, you want to order for a cab, so you have the lag ride, right? That gives you option for you to call on the cab and then you can get on it. If you want to connect your first or last mile, you have the first and last mile buses. You want to get on the major road, all right? You have our own buses.
The lag ride is under you guys?
No, it's not under us, right? And then you also have, of course, we know the Blue Line. Everybody knows about the Blue Line. That's going to be providing mobility for over 500,000. We know about Lag Ferry and all the initiative going on within that space, right? All right. So the idea is to connect all those buses. So you have a multimodal integration such that seamlessly you can connect from one mode to the other. Now, part of the achievement that I've also said is about the affordability, right? At this point in time, 50% shave or haircut on your cost of transportation is massive, right? It's massive. And in terms of travel time, right? Today, if you get on the corridor, the BRT corridor, you save as much as 1 hour on your journey time. Right, so that is also a massive, massive achievement.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oguntona, for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.